true beauty is not a mirror. It is a broken mirror, one you have the courage to piece back together, until you truly recognize yourself. Society told you that to be beautiful, you must be pleasing, symmetrical, light, quiet. But every time you tried to please everyone, you lost a fragment of yourself. Authentic beauty doesn't come from control, but from self-knowledge. It is the natural radiance of a woman who has met her shadow, embraced her light, and begun to live not as a character, but as her true self. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." In this video, we won't speak about tricks, but about transformation. We'll explore 7 deep habits that make a woman irresistibly beautiful, not because she appears to be, but because she is. This is beauty that doesn't fade. It's beauty that remains, because it rises from the soul. And now, the journey begins. We've been told a lie so often, it's hard to recognize it as a lie anymore. That beauty is about pleasing others. About being seen, admired, wanted. That the more perfect your appearance, the more worthy your presence. This is the trap of the persona, the mask you wear to be accepted. Jung called it the part of ourselves shaped by the outside world. The version of you that smiles when she wants to cry, that shrinks to make others comfortable, that edits herself to fit expectations. And while the persona helps us survive, it doesn't let us shine. Because true beauty can't exist behind a mask. A mask may win attention, but it will never create connection. Women are not here to be ornaments. We are not here to perform. You don't owe the world a performance, you owe yourself authenticity. Real beauty begins when you stop asking, "Do they approve of me?" and start asking, "Do I recognize myself in the life I'm living?" You become truly beautiful the moment your outer expression begins to match your inner essence. When you no longer need to act, but simply be. This is why some women glow without makeup. Why some voices are captivating without shouting. Why some presences are magnetic without effort. Because they've stopped chasing the illusion and started embodying their truth. To be beautiful is not to be perfect. It is to be real. It is to embrace your contradictions, your softness and your strength, your wildness and your wisdom. And to stand in the middle of them all without apologizing. It is to walk away from roles you've outgrown, and step into the woman you were always meant to become. That's not something you can buy. That's something you become. So before we speak of habits, you must be willing to remove the mask. The mask that smiles when you're tired. That agrees when your soul says no. That silences your truth in exchange for being liked. The world doesn't need more perfect women. It needs more whole women. Because when a woman returns to herself, the illusion shatters. And what's left is powerful, radiant, unforgettable. Habit 1, she honors her shadow. Every woman carries within her a hidden realm. A place where her anger lives. Her fears. Her unmet needs. Her instincts, silenced. Her desires, shamed. Her wildness, caged. Jung called this space the shadow, the part of the psyche we hide, repress, or deny. Not because it is evil, but because it doesn't fit the image we were told to uphold. But here's the truth, you cannot be truly beautiful if you are at war with parts of yourself. The woman who shines the brightest is the one who has walked through her darkness and survived herself. To honor your shadow is not to indulge it, but to acknowledge it. To say, "You are part of me. I see you. I will not abandon you." Most of us were taught to disconnect. To stay positive. To smile even when we're crumbling. But your shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it, it just becomes louder in silence. Women who are truly magnetic have a kind of groundedness. A calm power. They don't explode easily, nor do they shrink. Why? Because they have met themselves in places others avoid. They've cried without shame. They've screamed into pillows. They've journaled their rage. They've asked their jealousy what it's trying to protect. They've forgiven their younger self and stopped editing her out of the story. They've stopped pretending that they're always fine. They've stopped fearing being too much. They've made space for their contradictions to coexist. This is the work of beauty most will never see, but everyone will feel. Because when a woman integrates her shadow, she no longer leaks her wounds into every relationship. She stops projecting blame. She stops needing validation. She stops fearing her own depth. She becomes whole. And wholeness is unmistakably beautiful. You cannot embody light without first befriending your darkness. You cannot command a room if you're still hiding from yourself. And you cannot love your reflection if you hate what it hides. So look inward. With tenderness. With courage. With curiosity. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your forgotten ally. And the day you stop rejecting her is the day you begin to glow in a way no filter could ever replicate. Habit 2, she embodies her archetype. Inside every woman lives a cast of ancient energies. They are not roles to perform, but truths to embody. Jung called them archetypes, primal forces of the collective unconscious. The queen. The mother. The wild woman. The mystic. The warrior. The lover. The sage. Each one holds a key to your wholeness. Each one awakens at a different season of your life. And each one, when fully embodied, reveals a unique form of beauty. The woman who has awakened her archetypes is no longer just nice or pretty or smart. She is real. And complete. She is soft and fierce. Sensual and grounded. Playful and wise. She walks with a presence that feels both familiar and mythic, like something ancient is alive in her. Most women, without knowing, live trapped in a single archetype, often the one society rewards. The caretaker. The good girl. The peacemaker. But true beauty is born when a woman allows herself to be all that she is. When she reclaims the forgotten parts. The wild. The sacred. The untamed. To embody your archetype is not to choose a label. It is to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. The queen sets boundaries and walks with vision. The lover moves with sensuality and magnetic joy. The warrior speaks truth even when her voice trembles. The mystic listens within and honors the unseen. The wild woman dances barefoot with her scars. The mother births not just children, but creativity, compassion, and healing. The sage sees patterns, holds wisdom, and leads with depth. Each is beautiful. Each is powerful. And you are all of them. When you access these energies, your face changes. Your posture shifts. Your voice deepens. People feel something in you they can't quite explain, because you are no longer performing a version of femininity. You are inhabiting it. To embody your archetype is to become unforgettable. Not because you conform, but because you resonate. Not because you fit in, but because you remember. And when a woman remembers herself, the world remembers what beauty really means. Habit 3, she protects her energy. Not all beauty glows, some guards. There's a kind of beauty that does not ask to be seen. It creates space around it. A quiet field of presence. A calm that speaks louder than charm. A truly beautiful woman protects her energy like a sacred fire. Because she knows, everything in her life, her thoughts, her voice, her health, her relationships, flows from the quality of that inner flame. Jung taught that the unconscious is always active, always exchanging energy between the inner world and the outer. When a woman doesn't guard her boundaries, her unconscious becomes crowded. Her dreams vanish. Her intuition dulls. Her beauty dims. Protecting your energy is not about avoiding people. It's about choosing what gets access to your nervous system. It's about noticing what drains you and having the courage to step back. It's about learning to say no, not with guilt, but with self-respect. Because not everyone deserves your softness. Not every situation is meant to be fixed. And not every invitation deserves your attention. The woman who protects her energy doesn't explain her peace. She just lives it. She doesn't chase, she chooses. And that choosing becomes her power. She's not addicted to urgency. She's not impressed by chaos. She knows that what's meant for her won't require her to abandon herself. She doesn't apologize for needing rest. She doesn't shrink in the presence of pressure. She listens to her body. She trusts the quiet. She honors the pause. So she turns off the noise. She steps out of spaces that feel off. She listens to the subtle yes and the sacred no. She rests. She recharges. She remembers. In a world that profits off our exhaustion, radiance becomes an act of rebellion. There is nothing more beautiful than a woman who no longer leaks her life force. Who walks into a room, not to prove herself, but to be herself. Whose peace is palpable. Whose boundaries are clear. Whose presence is felt, even in silence. Because beauty is not how much light you reflect. It's how much light you protect. And the more she protects her energy, the more that energy becomes unmistakably magnetic. Habit 4, she walks in her own rhythm. A woman's beauty blooms not in speed, but in rhythm. We live in a world addicted to hustle. A culture that celebrates urgency, overachievement, and constant output. But this tempo is not hers. It was never meant to be. A truly beautiful woman no longer moves at the pace of pressure. She walks in tune with her own inner rhythm, a rhythm that flows with the moon, with breath, with intuition, with the sacred cycles of life. Jung spoke of individuation, the slow, sacred process of becoming who you really are. That process has no deadline. No clock. No competition. The woman who moves in her rhythm does not rush. She is not driven by fear of missing out. She knows, nothing real can be rushed. Nothing sacred blooms overnight. Her beauty is not in the perfection of her schedule, but in the way she honors time as a living force, not a taskmaster. She rests when her body asks. She creates when the muse whispers. She slows down when the soul needs silence. And this slowness makes her powerful. Because when you walk in your rhythm, you stop outsourcing your worth to busyness. You remember, you are not late. You are not behind. You are not wrong for moving slowly. Nature moves in cycles. The moon waxes and wanes. The ocean breathes in and out. The rose opens when it's ready. Even winter, in all her silence, has purpose. So do you. The woman who walks in her own rhythm is magnetic because she feels anchored. She's not chasing, she's aligning. She's not reacting, she's attuning. She's not proving, she's being. And people feel it. In her voice. In her timing. In the way she enters a room without urgency. She gives others permission to slow down, to soften, to return to themselves. In a world that pushes women to perform and produce, she becomes beautiful by reclaiming her time. And the woman who reclaims her time, reclaims her power. And in doing so, she reclaims her radiance, not as performance, but as presence. Habit 5. She speaks with the voice of her soul. Some women speak, and the whole room shifts. Not because they are loud, but because they are aligned. A beautiful voice is not about tone or eloquence. It is a voice that carries truth. And truth has a frequency the body cannot ignore. In Jungian psychology, the self speaks through symbols, dreams, intuitions, and often, through the voice that trembles before it liberates. The voice of the soul is not always polished. It is not rehearsed. But it is real. A truly beautiful woman speaks from that place. She doesn't decorate her words to be liked. She doesn't shrink her voice to avoid discomfort. She doesn't speak to fill silence, she speaks to reveal essence. Her words are intentional. Her pauses are sacred. Her presence is the message before the message. She has learned to listen to herself first. She has unlearned the need to be agreeable. She has remembered that her voice is not an accessory, it is a gateway to her power. And sometimes, the most magnetic thing she says is nothing at all. Silence, when rooted in presence, becomes gold. To speak with the voice of your soul is not to be perfect. It is to be courageous. It is to say the true thing, even if your voice shakes. To ask for what you need. To say no when your body tightens. To say yes only when your whole being opens. This kind of voice doesn't dominate, it invites. It opens hearts. It sets standards. It creates resonance, not noise. It also creates safety, because a voice rooted in truth doesn't manipulate, it clarifies. It doesn't seek attention, it brings awareness. It doesn't demand approval, it embodies integrity. And it takes time. Because most women have been taught to speak to avoid, not to connect. To flatter, not to express. To perform, not to embody. But when a woman reclaims her voice, she reclaims her vibration. And that vibration is felt far beyond her words. A beautiful woman doesn't just sound confident, she sounds true. And that truth, when spoken with softness and strength, becomes unforgettable. The world doesn't need more perfect speakers. It needs more honest women, whose words come from the deep well of their own becoming. Habit 6. She feeds herself with symbols and meaning. True beauty is not skin deep, it is soul deep. And the soul is not fed by trends, status, or noise. It is fed by symbol, by ritual, by meaning. Jung believed the human psyche speaks in symbols, in dreams, myths, stories, images. When a woman disconnects from this symbolic world, she becomes starved on a deeper level. She may look alive on the surface, but inside, she feels hollow. She might wear light on her face, but feel darkness in her spirit. A truly beautiful woman doesn't just feed her body, she nourishes her psyche. She surrounds herself with beauty that speaks. She reads words that awaken. She listens to music that moves her. She lights candles not for aesthetic, but to make the invisible visible. She sees signs. She pays attention to dreams. She honors the quiet inner voice as much as the loud outer world. Because she knows, a life without depth becomes noise. And noise dims radiance. Meaning is her nourishment. She doesn't just wake up, she awakens. She doesn't just consume, she chooses. She lives in alignment with what feels sacred, not just what feels urgent. While the world feeds on stimulation, she feeds on symbolism. And this makes her different. She prays, even if her prayer is silence. She meditates, even if her meditation is a walk among trees. She writes to hear her own soul speak. She paints. She creates. She grieves. She celebrates. She makes her life a sacred conversation between the seen and the unseen. She creates altars of intention in her home. She collects images that stir her spirit. She honors cycles, moons, and meaning in the mundane. The woman who lives with meaning carries a glow that can't be imitated. It doesn't come from what she wears. It comes from what she honors. And in honoring beauty, love, grief, joy, and mystery, she becomes beauty itself. She is nourished not just by food or success, but by truth, by presence, by the deep knowing that her life is part of something ancient, alive, and whole. This is the kind of beauty that doesn't expire. It evolves. And the more meaning she makes of her life, the more luminous she becomes. Habit 7. She remembers who she is. There comes a moment, quiet, still, undeniable, when a woman remembers. Not who the world told her to be. Not who she became to survive. But who she was before the forgetting. Jung believed that the journey of individuation is not about becoming something new, but about returning to what was always there. The core. The essence. The self. A truly beautiful woman is not trying to become someone else. She is remembering the woman she was born to be. She remembers the child who danced without shame. The girl who asked questions without fear. The young woman who dreamed without limits. She remembers not just with her mind, but with her body. With her breath. With her tears. With her silence. She remembers through symbols, through sacred rage, through stillness. Through the ache of what was lost, and the thrill of what is awakening. And the more she remembers, the more she sheds. Old masks. Old roles. Old stories that never belonged to her. She no longer needs them. She no longer fits them. She no longer apologizes for the size of her soul. And what remains is radiance. Not manufactured. Not borrowed. But hers, original and sacred. She does not strive. She returns. She does not chase beauty, she becomes it. She becomes the kind of woman whose presence feels like truth. Like home. Like memory. Because the most beautiful women are not performing. They are remembering. They are walking themselves back to wholeness. Back to essence. Back to origin. And when a woman remembers who she is, the whole world starts to remember her too. Now you know, beauty is not something you chase. It is something you uncover. Something you remember. Something you become when you stop performing and start returning. Each of these 7 habits is a doorway back to your essence. Not to impress the world, but to meet yourself again. Because when a woman becomes whole, she becomes undeniably radiant. So walk slowly. Choose intentionally. Live symbolically. And let your beauty rise, not from perfection, but from presence. If this message spoke to your soul, subscribe for more. And never forget, your light was never lost. It was just waiting.